Jacqueline Woodward, thank you. You're very welcome.
Can you hear me? No, it's not.
I can turn it up.
Hello? Hello? Can you hear me? Yeah. Oh, that's good. It's maybe a little bit of a misleading title. It is about homemade funerals, but really it's about reclaiming funerals. So that can mean many things. So it could mean having a funeral director and using a funeral director for everything and letting them show you the way, or it could mean doing everything yourself. So my passion really is reclaiming these things so that we have choice. And the choice could be anything, either of those things or anything between the two. So I'm not necessarily going to talk just about having a funeral at home, although you can do that too. So I haven't got an axe to grind about us taking funerals away from funeral directors or not letting other people do it for us. But I thought I'd start with a poem, because I think it gives an idea of the place we might be in when we're organising a funeral. And this is by Lyrian ap Tower. I am bone tired from travelling that hard last mile with you. The blasted holes and smoking stumps along the way have drained the sun from me. So heavy this weight of tears, this burden of love. Yet were you to ask, my heart would leap and drop all trophies to walk with you again. How flimsy is weariness when balanced against one more glimpse, one sound, one touch of you. Come back. There are still more words to find, more heart to open. My conceit decrees that it is not your time. Listen, I will say when, and it is not now. And who am I to decide your date? I will tell you. I am the one who washed your feet, wiped your sweat, smelled your fear, and still held on. I am the one who loved beyond pain, through exhaustion, past stench, beyond doubt. Yet if the sands of time in both worlds were poured out for me, could I stop your coach from its homeward journey, or ease the wrenching of your death? When the sun is gone, I look inside for illumination. At the dark of moon, a question forms slowly. For whom do I mourn? You, now whole and free, dancing in the light, or me, wandering my hard last mile without your frail arm to guide me? And I read that because I think it gives something of the feeling that we might be having when we're arranging a funeral. Whether somebody's died suddenly or from a long illness or anything really, that we're in a very vulnerable place. And we might be worn out. We're often afraid. We're afraid of death. We're afraid for our futures. And when we're tired and afraid, we're also vulnerable. And that means we're vulnerable to the industry that has grown up around death. And I love funeral directors. I think they're just the most lovely people, and all the conversations I've had with funeral directors have been a joy because they're so connected to what's real. To be connected to death and to be real about death is such a powerful thing, and they are lovely, but the industry itself has taken a lot of our power from us. So really that's what I wanted to talk about today. And Eva Illich says that modern death has been expropriated, and Philippe Ari says that modern death is invisible and silenced. And of course something that's invisible and silenced, particularly something invisible, often makes us afraid, and when we're afraid, we're vulnerable. We used to know about death. We used to see death everywhere. In Neolithic times, our relatives would be buried beneath the floor of our houses, and they were always present. I've been to Skanda Vale up in Orkney, and there they found burials beneath the floor of the living room, where people had their beds and they had a little chest of drawers made of stone. It's really beautiful, and then underneath were the bones of the dead. And I remember when my mum and dad died that I really yearned to have them buried under my floor, even though I rented, so it wouldn't have been. But there was something in me that wanted them close to me, to know that their bones were there. And before the Reformation, we believed in purgatory, and it was the responsibility of the living, our sacred duty, to ensure that formal prayers for the dead were performed. So we had to be in connection with the dead. There were things that we had to do personally. We couldn't hand it over to somebody else. With the Reformation, much of the established relationship between the living and the dead was broken. So religion's an important thing here, really. In Catholicism, the dead are present. In Protestantism, they're separate from us. So there's a different kind of feeling in different religions of how present the dead are. And many of us don't have a religion now, so again, there's this constant kind of, well, who tells us how close the dead are, and what do we see of the death of our loved ones? In the Industrial Revolution, with the advent of cities, there was another disconnection, and there was a breakdown of extended families, the loss of rituals regarding death and grief, and that's when professional undertakers emerged. So there always would have been people in villages and towns that would have dealt with the dead and helped the families, but the professional undertakers are kind of removed from the place you live in. You might just phone them up in a phone book or find them somewhere. I mean, I was very lucky when my dad died, because the people that he wanted to look after him when he died were 2 minutes walk up the road, and so he had a relationship with them. That's so unusual, really, for somebody who's old and dying to have a relationship with their undertakers. And he used to stand at the bus stop outside the undertakers, and they would joke and they would say, "Oh, Ron, you're looking a bit peaky today. Do you want to come in and wait?" And I think they would perform amusing skits for the people at the bus stop by him having his arm dragged into the undertakers by the funeral director, and him trying to pretend he was trying to get away. And they would sometimes try to measure him at the bus stop and things like that. So, but this is the thing, that was joyful. And when my dad died, and those people were the ones I contacted, and they were the ones who took his body, I felt happy, because I felt that he knew them and that they knew him. And there was love in that. There was such love in that. And I didn't want his body to be away from me. And if I'd known what I know now, I might have tried to keep him at home. But I felt good, because I knew that he knew them, and that they'd laugh together, and that they had a life together. So, in the Industrial Revolution, dead bodies came to be seen as a health hazard and a threat to civic order. I like the thought of the dead being a threat to civic order, because I like to be a threat to civic order while I'm alive, and I like the thought that when I'm dead I might be able to carry on. So this is when cremation became very popular, because it was hygienic. This is the thing, when they talk about embalming, funeral directors, they call it hygienic services. This word hygiene is sort of used as a bit of a weapon against us, I think, as though if we don't do those things, we're not being hygienic. And it's not really about that. So cremation was considered hygienic because it was mechanical, because it was quick, efficient and modern. And modern, again, you know, people want to do something modern. It makes us feel like we're brave and we're forging the way, you know. But often modern things become the things we don't like anymore. We try to get back to the older way of doing things, which I think a lot of us are doing now. So cremation was seen as the solution to late 19th century death in cities. And it echoed changes in views regarding the body in medicine. So it went from the body being sinful but the ensouled image of God to just an electrochemical machine. And so as medicine sought to control the body, death became seen as an embarrassing failure rather than a natural process. So medicine was seen as the heroic, saviour, and death was to be swept away. And I know when my father was dying, he was very clear that he didn't want to go to a hospice for his own reasons. The hospice is a beautiful place, but he didn't want to go, he wanted to be at home. And the hospital decided that he should go to a hospice because my mother was elderly and frail, and they didn't ask us, they just decided that that was what was going to happen. And they said because they thought she wouldn't be able to cope with it. And it wasn't, they'd arranged it all before we even knew what was happening, but he swore at them so much that they decided they better not do it. So that is another, and my dad never swore, he was a very polite man, but he saved it all up for that moment, I think. So he wanted to go home, and he never made it home, he died in the hospital, but they had taken the bed for him to go home, back to our house. The bed was in the living room, it was all there for him, and he never quite managed to get there. But I think that the fact that we listened to him, that we were doing what he wanted, and he knew the bed was there, I think that made such a difference to him when he actually died. And the hospital was lovely, he had his own room, and they were very respectful. It was as good a death as death can be, I think. But it mattered that he was listened to. So often we're not listened to, and I think often that's the case with funerals, that families feel swept away and not listened to. When my partner died, I was recommended to speak to a particular funeral directors by a vicar in the place where he was going to have his ceremony. And one of the things about it was that she said, oh, they'll do everything for you, they'll make it fine, you know, you won't have to worry about anything. And I phoned them, and they were very lovely, and they were very kind, and there was something very seductive about what they were saying. You know, they made me feel very soothed. And I thought, oh yeah, it would be lovely just to float away on this lovely river of them knowing what they're doing. It's so beautiful. But I started to feel uncomfortable really, because I felt as though I wasn't doing enough for him, that I wasn't engaged in what was happening, that things would happen that he wouldn't have wanted, that it was too easy really. I mean, I don't know why we have this thing about things should be easy in life. Life isn't that easy sometimes, and death certainly isn't easy. But there are reasons, you know, there are financial and psychological reasons why being more engaged in the process of death and dying is better for us. So it's kind of a spell. It's a spell by an industry that wants to charge us a lot of money. And those particular funeral directors, I had no money when he died, and I managed to raise £2,000 from friends, and that was all I had for everything. And the funeral directors quoted me £2,100. And that was without a ceremony, without a coffin. I was going to do all those things. And when I asked them, well, what are you charging me for? They said, for things that funeral directors do. And it was almost like they didn't want to tell me what they were, because it might upset me. And I couldn't go with them, because I literally didn't have enough money to do it anyway. And I'm glad, because it made me make the choice not to go with them. And I managed to find another funeral directors who did the same thing for me, and they did more of what I asked them to do, and they charged me £700. So that the first ones were going to charge me 3 times as much. And this is one of the things to look out for. Some of the funeral directors, they'll have a low-cost package, but it is a package, and they don't break down what they're charging you for. It will just be the package. So when I said to them, well, I'm going to get the coffin myself, what will the price be then? They said, oh, well, we've knocked off £100. And I said, but coffins don't cost £100, they cost a lot more than that. But that was it, they were willing to do that. And then they said that they'd added on an amount of money for if we wanted to go and view his body out of hours. And I'd never said that I wanted to do that, but they said they'd added it in because it would make it easier for us if we did want to do it, that we wouldn't have to talk about money at that time. It was just much better if they added it in at the beginning. You know, and this happens a lot, I think, and we're nervous to ask, and we're scared to ask, and we're feeling sad and vulnerable, and we don't want to do it. So it's this thing, isn't it, that it's so hidden. Most deaths are now in hospital, and so they are invisible. Now most of us die in hospital, and 70% of us are cremated. And what we don't see, we're afraid of. When my mother died, and my father. When my father died, I washed his body when he died. I never thought that I could do any of those things. My father dying was my biggest fear in life. And I thought when my father died that I would not survive. And that was a big fear for me for a long time. And I washed his body, and the more I did, the more soothed I felt, really, and the less afraid I felt. And so I blessed his body in the hospital. And then when he went to the funeral directors, I asked if I could go and wash his body there. And I imagined that they would be with me and just show me what to do. And what they did was they took me into a room and they just said, well, there's all the things, so if you just do what you want to do and we'll come back when you're ready. And they just left me there. And I was absolutely shocked. I was so shocked. And my father was lying on a sort of metal trolley, which looked it was all very clinical, which of course it has to be. They have to, they have to do things there that they have to do. They're washing the body, so there needs to be an ability to have water around. And I just stood there, I was just absolutely frozen. And then I saw that they had on the wall a clock that said it had a vampire on it. And it said, I love the smell of formaldehyde in the mornings. And it made me laugh. And then I thought, but this is just life, isn't it? This is just life. And we have this thing that death is the opposite of life, but birth is the opposite of death. Everything is life. Dying is life. It's all part of our life. And so I was able to wash my father's body, and I washed his hair. And it was one of the most beautiful, and remains one of the most beautiful things that I've ever done. To wash my father's hair. And there was a hairdryer, and to dry his hair. It was something I'd never done while he was alive. It was beautiful. And I recognise that not everyone would want to do that, and not everyone would be able to do that. But I just want to say that I am always afraid. I'm afraid of nearly everything. I'm afraid now, doing this talk. I'm afraid of seeing dead bodies. I'm afraid of all sorts of things. And we can do more than we think we can. So if you feel like you want to do it, then ask. And also with cremation, with both my parents, we asked if we could view the cremation. I don't know if everyone knows that it's possible to do that, but you can ask to view the cremation. People have a lot of fears about people being piled up and having to wait a long time to be cremated. So certainly that takes that fear away, because if you've asked, then it will happen straight away after the funeral. But I think they do that anyway. I think crematoriums are amazing places, and they're very respectful, is what my experience has been. But when my father died and we asked to see him cremated, obviously I'd never seen anything like that before, and we stood behind a glass window, and I was there with some of my friends, and we sang as he went into the fire. We sang, powerful songs about death and life and rebirth. And it was beautiful. He had a willow coffin, and it was beautiful to see the fire starting to burn it. I can only say that it was a stunning sight, and it made me feel better. Because our imaginations really are the worst things. They've got all sorts of things in them about what happens and what it will look like. And it wasn't anything like that. It was very beautiful. And I saw it again with my mother and with my friend's mother when she died. We asked to see, but they didn't have a viewing window, so we actually were in the room where the oven was. So that was another experience. That was even closer because we could feel the heat. And her brother came, and he was very nervous to come in, but he said afterwards that he was so glad that he'd just seen. And it's an act of love to witness that. It's an act of love to the person who's died. I work as a counsellor with primary school children, and one day one of them, an 8-year-old, came into the room and he said that his granddad had died, and he'd asked several people in his family what happens to dead bodies, like when they're buried, what happens? Are there maggots, he said, what happens, and what happens when you're cremated, what happens then? And no one would tell him, and he was sort of trying to imagine what that would be, and it just confused him, and he didn't understand why no one would tell him. So I sat there and I said, well, what happens? And I talked to him about what happens when an animal dies, that he might have seen that, and what happens in a crematorium. And I was really getting into it, because I like to talk about these things. I thought this is important. It's important to talk to young people about these things. And then in the middle of it, he started to glaze over, and he went, I'd quite like to go and play computer games now. So he wasn't revolted, he wasn't shocked, it was nothing, he just wanted to know. And somebody just telling him, without pretending it was anything that it isn't, or trying to make it beautiful or not frightening, it was fine, and he just went off to play computer games, and we never talked about it again. But there was something in, before I spoke to him, there was a lot of fear, and then afterwards it was just like, oh, is that all it is? So it can be like that for all of us, I think. We all get afraid, and we all wonder what's happening. So I wanted to talk a little bit about funeral poverty. This is the preamble really to talking about what we can do to claim funerals back, but why it's important. I'm a spokesperson for the Fair Funerals campaign, which is the Quaker Social Action Group. And somebody has already mentioned them, but they started with an organisation called Down to Earth in the East End of London, because people were ending up owing such huge amounts of money that they had nothing left. And if somebody's got nothing, then that's obvious because they can't pay and they will have to speak about not being able to pay. But some people it's hidden because they've got life savings, and they might be spending their life savings on somebody's funeral and have nothing left, and they'll never speak about it, but they'll end up with nothing, and that is just as bad really as somebody having nothing. So it's estimated that more than 100,000 people in the UK can't afford to die. So basically we've got to stay alive because we can't afford to be buried. And the average cost of arranging a funeral, burial and cremation is £7,622. And this is a figure from 2015, I think, so it probably is more now. And in the year before that, the cost had risen by 7.1%, which is far above inflation. Between 2004 and 2013, the cost of a funeral rose by 80%. 80%. That is just, why does that happen? It can only happen because the people that are being charged that money are very vulnerable and they don't want to question it. So the level of funeral poverty has risen 50% from 3 years ago. There are huge numbers of people who can't afford to bury somebody that they love. And there are funeral plans that we can pay into before we die, and that does provide people with some comfort. But I've heard about people whose loved ones have had a funeral plan and they've still been charged several £1,000s after the funeral for added costs, and because the funeral plan didn't cover the cost of the funeral. So it's important to check, even if you've got a funeral plan, that it will cover everything. I've also noticed that people like Dignity have funeral plans that are called bronze, silver and gold. And there's some sort of, I don't know, it's a psychological thing, isn't it? If we're paying for somebody's funeral and we say, oh, we'll have the bronze one, somehow we feel that we should be having the gold one, because the more money we spend, the more dignity there is. And that's not really true. How have we come to equate dignity with money? I don't know. I can only think it's because our power's been taken from us. Really, the only power that we're having in a lot of funerals is the money that we're handing over. And so we take the power we can, and we get the dignity we can by giving a lot of money, even to our own detriment. It's very difficult. And really, the Fair Funerals campaign, their idea is to campaign through government. So recently there's been a government select committee on funeral poverty, and they're doing a lot of work with funeral directors to get them to sign a Fair Funerals pledge, which means that they have to itemise what they're charging you for. So if you go to a funeral directors, you should be able to ask them to provide you with an itemised bill and be able to say, well, I don't want that and I do want that. And they shouldn't say it's just for what funeral directors do, because that isn't enough. The thing is that when somebody has died, we are in a vulnerable state. So any of us that are thinking about these things now, it's so valuable. It's so valuable to have engaged with this before we're even thinking about a funeral, whether our own or a loved one. So if people need to apply for state support, there is the social fund. And that fund has been described as insufficient to meet the needs of the poorest in society. If you are officially a relative, which I wasn't when my partner died because we weren't married, and you're on the right benefits, they will offer you some money, but they offer you £700. and that's all you can have. It's very hard to get it. They try to put you off. And £700 is far less than, for instance, the 2,100 that I was quoted, and certainly a lot less than 7,000 that a lot of people are having to pay. So there isn't really very much help. So the average cost of a typical funeral, this is breaking down the 7,000, is £3,456 plus £2,006 for the memorial flowers and catering, and £2,160 for discretionary estate administration costs. I don't know what that means. I don't know what people are being charged for. So the thing is that we feel there are a lot of rules around dying and death, and that really the funeral directors will take a lot of that stress away from us. But there are so few rules, and people have talked about this already. All you really need is the death certificate, which you will be given. And, I mean, I was given the death certificate, even though I wasn't officially next of kin, because he had said I was next of kin. So I was given the death certificate, and you're given a green form. And the green form is where you let them know where the person is buried or what has happened to the person's body. So all you need to do is fill in the green form, and then my partner was buried, so I gave the green form to the woodland burial people who ran it, and they just tore off the bottom and sent it back to where you have to send it. That's all you have to do. There are no rules really other than that. And sometimes local authorities can pretend there are rules, like if you go across borders you have to pay an amount of money to go across a county border with a body, that they've got the right to know what you're doing with the body, where you're burying the body. They haven't. Councils have got no right to know any of those things. We have the power. When somebody dies, we have the power to look after that person that we've loved, and to make sure that what happens is what they would have wanted or what we would want. So there are a lot of different costs. Woodland burials are more expensive than cremations, I believe, but I managed to find a woodland burial site that charged people the same, because she was very passionate about people being able to afford burial. So you can, if you shop around, and this is it's a horrible thing to say, even I think that, shop around for a funeral, it feels like not the thing to do. But I once spoke to the head of one of the funeral directors' organisational bodies, and he said, well, people, if you're booking a hotel room, you wouldn't just book the first hotel room you phoned up about. If it was too much, you just go to a different one. Well, I said, but these are people who, somebody's died. You know, they've got enough to deal with. They're not going to necessarily want to ring 10 funeral directors and ask what your costs are and how can I cut down the costs. But he seems to not really see the difference between booking a hotel room and burying someone you love. So it's this thing really, isn't it, that the more we're prepared beforehand, the better it is. So the Natural Death Centre, that several people have mentioned already, is a really good resource for finding out about all these things. And they've written down some of the myths about funerals that people have told them when they've run them up for advice. They've been told that you have to legally use a funeral director. Well, that isn't true. You don't have to use one at all. Or you can use them for certain things and not other things, which I'll talk about in a little bit. That it's against the law not to use a coffin, also not true. Somebody can just be wrapped in a shroud, or, you know, my partner was wrapped in a blanket that his mother had made, a sort of knitted blanket. It was very beautiful. That you have to use a hearse to move a body, not true. You don't have to have a hearse. My partner was put in the back of a hatchback, and we drove him from Glastonbury, where his ceremony was, to the woodland burial, which was near Stonehenge, and we went across several county borders. And it wasn't until I came to the 2014 Elephant in the Room event that somebody said, oh, you can't drive dead bodies across county borders without telling somebody. But I didn't know that, so we done it anyway. So it's fine. I think the rule is, as long as the body isn't on view, that it's fine. So you can transport somebody in any way you want to. If you bury someone in your garden, you have to register the grave with the land registry. Also not true. Ashes can't have a woodland burial because the body was embalmed. That's also not true. It's more difficult, if somebody's been embalmed, it's more difficult for them to have a woodland burial itself, because woodland burials like what goes into the ground to be biodegradable. And of course, if somebody's been embalmed, they're full of chemicals, really. So, but if the ashes, usually it's fine for them to be buried. The vicar has to say the committal, also not true. When my dad died, he said he didn't want any religion, and it was really the first funeral I'd had anything to do with, so I wasn't confident to say anything really. And so we did have a vicar, but I did say to him, my dad doesn't want any religion, and so there wasn't any really. And in the end, I did do the committal, but the vicar was there, and it was lovely. It was lovely to have the reassurance that he was there, and that if I'd fallen apart, that he would have stepped in, and that. You know, it's to do what you think you can do. It's not to be a campaigner and try and make yourself do something that you won't be able to manage. And to have these things that make you feel more reassured is really important. So again, the council have the right to demand details of a home burial, not true. There's a charge payable if the body is transported across borders. As far as I know, that's not true. If somebody tells you that, that's just because the councils have made that up themselves. And that a body must be embalmed if you want to view it, also not true. When my dad died, certainly I was visiting him 2 weeks after he died, and he hadn't been embalmed. And it was fine. It was fine. So, I mean, I did say to the funeral director that I thought he was looking a bit peaky at that point, to be honest, but it wasn't horrible. This is the thing, it wasn't horrible. And that a funeral director is needed for a cremation is one of the others, and some crematoriums do tell people that they won't cremate someone unless there's a funeral director. They're not allowed to do that. They're not allowed to say that. So, you know, and if they do, maybe there's another crematorium that you can choose instead. So with somebody being buried in your garden or in another piece of land that's yours, you have to contact the Environment Agency. Give guidelines, basically, that somebody should be buried at least 10 metres away from ditches and drains. This is about the groundwater. 30 metres from running and standing water, and that's a rule of thumb, really. And the Natural Death Centre provide grave digging information and also a sample register to put with the deed. So you have to register that somebody has been buried in your land, and you have to put that with the deeds of the house, and really that's all you have to do. You don't have to register it with the land registry. If you don't put it with the deeds, then if you sell the house, the people who buy it can exhume the body and they can charge you for it. If you sell the house and they want to exhume the body, but you've told them, then they have to pay for it. So, you know, but it's difficult, isn't it? We don't want our loved ones to be dug up. So, again, this is why we don't bury them under our floors, because we often move about. We're not the people we once were who stay in the same house all our lives. And also, you haven't got official access. If you move out of the house, you haven't necessarily got access to visit your loved one's body. So these are all things to bear in mind. But the idea that we can't do it at all is a false one. And I think just knowing that we're freer to do that than we realised is a liberating thing. So we don't need a service or a celebrant. We can just do it ourselves. I saw it, there's a video on YouTube of a lady whose service for her mother, she picked her up from the hospital in a camper van, and she wrapped her in a sheet. It was so beautiful. She wrapped her in a sheet, put her in the camper van, drove to a woodland burial site. She dug the grave herself, which she said was the funeral. That was the service that she gave, was to dig the grave. It took her several days. You know, it was huge energy that she put into it. She laid her mother in the ground and she filled the grave in. And that it was so beautiful to watch. And many of us would be shocked by that. You know, some people think you can't pick a body up from the hospital, that a funeral director has to do that. That's not true. So we've got so much freedom. Some people say that DIY funerals, as they're sometimes called, lack dignity, so that putting somebody in the back of the car lacks dignity. But dignity, in the Oxford English Dictionary, dignity is defined as true worth. So what we're trying to do is give someone their true worth. And I understand people feeling that it's not dignified, and if people feel that they want a hearse, and they want a traditional coffin, and they want all of it, that is a very beautiful thing, and you should have that. You should absolutely have that. But I can only say that when my partner was in the back of my friend's car, and we were driving, and there were eight cars in a convoy, and we all drove together. It was just the most joyous thing, really, and it was a beautiful thing. His coffin I got from Greenfield Funerals, and there's a leaflet from them on the table in reception. And they, some coffin makers won't provide coffins to the public, but they certainly will, and they provide cardboard coffins, and they'll have pictures put on them. So he had a starry sky on his coffin. It was absolutely beautiful. And that's the thing, there's so much we can do to make it personal. So Greenfield Coffins, they were very kind, they gave me a lot of really good advice. The cost was fine, it wasn't too expensive, and it just felt like even ordering the coffin was an act of love. So it wasn't just something that we saw when he was in it. I'd had such a hand in ordering it and thinking about what it should look like. So again, dignity is too often ascribed to standards set by commercial organisations. The more you spend, the more dignity you have. My friend's mother, when she died, didn't want flowers, so my friend wanted her to have flowers, so there was a bit of a difficulty between what he would like and what she would like. So what we did was we went out into the hedgerows and we collected things from the hedgerows, and it was autumn, so her coffin was covered in old man's beard and berries and different leaves. It was absolutely beautiful, and in that way we felt that we'd honoured what she wanted, and also we'd done something that my friend made him feel better about her funeral. So there's a lot of things we can do, and in that there was a lot of attention, there was a lot of effort, and there was a lot of mindfulness. There was a financial advisors near where I lived at the time, and they had a huge bush of lavender in their garden. So I went and knocked on the door and said, "Can I collect some of your lavender for my friend's mother's coffin?" And they were really happy to provide that. So it's like it becomes more of a community thing, even if we aren't in the community where the person has died. I find that mentioning death it just brings people in, it grounds people, and people will do all sorts of things that they wouldn't have done before that. It makes friends of people. So I'm going to read an account. This is about my partner's funeral that somebody wrote. Thoughts after a friend's funeral. When my time comes, as come it must, let not some mealy-mouthed, overpaid priest say meaningless words over me, intoning dreary passages of overused words, droning on about someone they do not know, fitting my name into the blank spaces in their well-leaved prayer book, and being paid for the privilege, pulling droll faces of mournful reverence in order to earn their keep, making comments to the mourners to keep them sweet, and pulling down their eyes in mock grief and sentiment. My needs are few. All I need is for friends and family to talk about me, the good, the bad, and the indifferent things for which they remember me. I want laughter, a few tears, love and sharing. I want beauty, music, songs, thoughtfulness and deep caring. I would like some flowers, wild ones, thrown around me. I want birds and bees and insects and butterflies to surround my resting place. I want owls and falcons, swans, mice, bats and frogs around me while I dream. Earthworms, moss, perhaps a tinkling stream. And most of all, I want there to be honesty. No sanctifying my person, no saying I was wonderful unless I was. I want the people who come to see me to laugh away at my mistakes, cry at my failures, giggle at my stupidity, admire the things I was proud of, and most of all to let me and each other know I was loved. Then I will be at peace. And that was a reaction to my partner's funeral in 2014. And I did do most of it myself, and a lot of things went wrong. We had music that didn't work, and he was a musician, so it was kind of traumatising in that moment. But afterwards, everyone said, because he was a sound technician as well, everyone said how funny it was that we were all laughing that at his own funeral the music didn't work. When we drove him to the burial ground, we couldn't find the way off the slip road for the A road. We drove round and round and round, and it was sort of difficult. But then somebody said, "Oh, but Will was always really awful at giving directions as well. So if he'd been here, he would have done that as well. It would have been just the same." So it's like not to feel that everything has to be perfect, just to embrace an experience, really. So I wanted to show, when I've been involved in funerals, I've made things. I find making things before the funeral really healing. We've done it with my parents' grandchildren, and also when Will died, I went to meet one of his friends I'd never met before, and we made some things. So this is, we did this for my dad and my mum and Will and my friend's mum. So it's just a little bag. It's very easy. It's just a bit of organza gathered up with a ribbon. And in it is a little tea-light candle, a little sweet like a toffee, and some bird seed. And this started with my dad because my dad loved to feed birds. But we did this for all of them. And then on the piece of card it says, "Please light a candle, feed the birds, and taste the sweetness of life in memory of," whoever it is. And this was given out to everyone at the funeral. So that's a really beautiful thing. It's lovely to make things, and we feel like often funerals are like 20 minutes long, but I've done this at crematoriums as well, and funeral directors are really lovely. They will take these things. I don't know how they do it, it's sort of magic. They manage to put things out on the chairs without seemingly have had any time to do it at all. They are amazing people. So if you do have a funeral director, they'll help you to do something like this. When my mother died, I wrote a poem, and it's called Ribbons. And there are 9 ribbons, and I wrote a line for each ribbon. So I wrote, "The first is for your birth that brought you into our lives. The second is for your adventurous spirit and love of the outdoors, of sun and water." And it went down to 9, and we've got 9 little ribbons on the card. What we did was we had 9 little posies of flowers, each with a matching ribbon. And as I read out each line, somebody took a posy with the matching ribbon and took it and put it on her coffin. So at the end of the funeral, it was covered in flowers. It was absolutely beautiful. So this is another thing that you can do, to write something, think of something creative. When my dad died, I was more nervous, so I found a poem that somebody else had written, and it was called 4 Candles, which was difficult because the funeral director was a very dignified man, and he thought that it was the Two Ronnies sketch, 4 Candles, which my dad would have loved, but it wasn't. It was about lighting 4 candles for the dead, and my father's grandchildren, as we read out each verse, the grandchildren went up and they lit a candle, and we made a wreath of rosemary around the candles. So there are lots of things that we can do in the services, just to reclaim them, just to do something beautiful that makes it more personal. And of course everyone took one of these away when my mum died, so that was a really lovely memory of her. If you want to look at any of these things afterwards, then do come back. So I do recognise that not all of us will want to have everything to do with the ceremony. So I've got some questions here to ask funeral directors. And this is all about reclaiming some of these things. You know, the more we ask, the more we can take back. So it's important to ask, is it a family-run funeral directors, or is it part of a chain? Some the chains like Dignity will have set costs, and when they buy family-run businesses, often the family-run business keeps the name, so you can think it's an independent one when it's actually part of a big chain. Do they belong to a trade organisation, and ask them for a code of conduct? So really all these things are just making them mindful that you're engaged in the process. Can you meet the person who will care for the body? And that feels important. As I say, when my dad died, I felt so much better for knowing the person who'd be looking after his body. And they will often let you do that. I didn't think they'd let me go and wash him, and I asked and they didn't bat an eyelid. So, can you see where the person who's died will be looked after prior to the funeral? So you can ask to see behind the scenes at the funeral home as well. Ask them what they feel about embalming. Sometimes they'll say to you, as I said, they'll say hygienic treatment, and we won't think that means embalming, but it does. So it's important to understand what their views are on embalming. Some funeral directors are very keen to embalm bodies. If you've got feelings about that, it's important to check. Can you help to wash and dress the body? That's another question that you can ask. I felt all right to wash my father's body. I didn't feel all right to dress his body. I felt that would be too difficult for me. And I honour that I didn't feel able to do that. Part of me wishes I'd done it, but I know that I would have found that hard. And it's all right. When my mother died, she'd had to have a post-mortem, so again I was nervous about washing her body, but I decided that I would do it, and there was nothing frightening. I saw the scar, and that they'd really carefully sewed up, and there was nothing horrible about it or frightening, and I'm glad that I saw it, because before I'd looked, I was afraid of what I might see, and I would have been imagining that, so I was glad that I saw. Are there restrictions on spending time with the body or added costs? Can they help you look after the body at home? So this might be a way that you can have a home funeral, that if you ask them if they can provide you with things that can help you keep the body at home, they'll always do different things. The best funeral directors will do what you ask. So when Will died, I was nervous about carrying his coffin through the Woodland burial site because it was very muddy, and I was frightened that we'd slip and his friends would be upset and nervous, and they'd sort of come out of the mood of what we were in. So I hired some funeral directors just to come and meet us at the gates of the Woodland burial site and to carry him to the grave, and they also lowered him in for us because it was a very deep grave. And that was fine, and they charged me £100 for that. So there should be more kind of ability to split down what you want them to do and don't want them to do. Does their price list break down everything that allows you choice? That's what I was just talking about. What types of coffee do they offer? Where are they sourced from? Are there alternatives, and can you provide your own? Some funeral directors, if you would like to provide your own coffin, they charge you extra for providing your own coffin. So they won't necessarily take the money off the price for you bringing the coffin yourself, but they then add some on because they've had to handle a coffin that they haven't ordered. So it's important to check all these things. There are a lot of things hidden. Are there choices of burial, cremation and natural burial grounds? And as I say, you can transport people a long way in your own car, so you could have a natural burial ground a long way away. And one of the things when my partner died was I half wanted him to be near where his friends were. And he lived in Somerset, I lived in London. A lot of his friends were in Somerset. So I did try to contact the natural burial ground that the council runs there, but it was very expensive. You had to pay for the grave to be dug yourself, so even though you paid for the site, you then had to pay for the grave diggers to come, and you had to renew your payment every 10 years in order for the body to stay there. And also, I phoned them and they didn't return my calls, which I found not to be a respectful thing when somebody's been bereaved. And so I felt like, although I wanted him to be buried there, I didn't want those people to have him. And that's often my experience with funeral directors as well. If they're charging too much, I don't want them to touch the body of someone I love. I want someone who's respectful and decent and loving to touch the body of someone I love. So basically I decided that they couldn't have him, which I thought, you can't have him. And I was contacted by somebody who had a burial ground quite close to Stonehenge, which really is somewhere that not many of us can get to. But my feeling is that he is in the right place. And I would rather feel that he's in the right place than feel that he's somewhere where people feel obliged to go and visit him because we made sure he was buried there so that they could, He is in his own beautiful place now. So the feelings that we have when somebody just dies about, oh, they need to be near to us, we need this, we need that, it might change over time. So give yourself some time really to settle into it and make decisions. Can our choice of day and time be accommodated? So you might have feelings about what you want in terms of the day and time. It's important to ask that, because often that, again, you get swept along with that. What types of transport is offered, and can you provide your own? So maybe you don't want a hearse, even for the coffin, you want to bring the person's van or a car or a horse and cart or a motorbike or, anything. There's so many things that we can do. Can you carry the coffin yourself and lower the body into the grave? All good funeral directors will show you how to carry a coffin, because there is a skill to it, as there is into lowering to the grave. And when the funeral directors who charged me such a small amount for my partner's funeral came to the funeral, they were just going to bring him and then leave us, but they're very good people, and they could see that we had no idea what we were doing in terms of carrying a coffin, and we had to go up some very, very steep steps with the coffin. And so they stayed and they helped us to do it. They taught us how to carry a coffin. They walked with us to make sure that we felt safe, that nothing happened. They wanted it to be okay. They lent us some trestles to put the coffin on in the site, because we were going to have to just put him on a table or something in the coffin. So, sometimes they do even more than they're asked to do. This is the thing. I haven't got a thing about funeral directors. It's the industry that I think we just need to be aware of it really. And then what type of ceremony? Do we need to have someone leading it? How much input can we have? So I've just got a reading about another funeral. This is Thomas's funeral, which was held in his community in Devon. For the funeral, he had the most heartfelt and earthy handmade ceremony and celebration I've ever experienced. We gathered forest-coloured in our hundreds, accompanied by at least 2 Morris sides, Thomas laying amongst us in a handmade felt leaf cocoon as the children ran about him. The ceremony was made by those who loved him with words and music and art. We made our way through the village to the top of the hill, carrying Thomas between us, as overhead flew birds made by the children in honour of the sky burial he had wished for. On the hilltop, overlooking the land he loved so much, our friend was laid in the earth. The children sat and watched and placed earth and gifts in the grave along with the rest of us, and we walked back down the hill to share food and memories and music and art. And I've just got one more quote. Beauty is not all in the brightness. In the shadowlands of pain and despair, we find slow, dark beauty. So I would encourage us all to be brave about going into the shadowlands of despair and making the invisible visible again. This is our power. Death belongs to us and it's been taken away, and there's so much we can do to take it back. So thank you very much.